let's take a deeper look and see what's really going on in there. Do you have some things in your past that you regret or that you're bummed about? Why are you carrying them around in this bag? There's other things you could carry. I guess our past mistakes are a part of who we are, and they do help us not make future mistakes. But that didn't sound very nice. That wasn't a very nice tone. I understand that one. And the other one, more than you know, probably a lot more than you know. You can imagine, right? Just being a physician and seeing sad things. There are things that are not my fault, but feel like my responsibility. You know, things that I wish had turned out different. Do you have anything like that? It's a beautiful bag that you have. And these things that have happened to you, they become a part of who you are. But they don't have to define you. It just is a very accusatory tone. I'll open it back up and we'll keep trying to figure out, keep trying to go through here, what's in here. Let's see.
Everything you do is wrong.
That seems like something we need to get out of there. I don't think that's true. Certainly there has to be at least one thing you've done that's right. What even is this? It's very crinkly. What is this thing? You may feel like everything you do is wrong. I hear that. That's one that I've got in my bag also. Have you ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy? I know you have. We've talked about it, that and dialectical behavioral therapy. Well, cognitive behavioral therapy, there's one principle called, thought distortions. It's looking at thoughts that it's very difficult for them or can't really likely be true by the very nature of being kind of a logical fallacy. So, everything you do, like what's the evidence that everything you do is wrong? I'm sure you can think of some evidence. But on the other hand, have you given time to think of the evidence that that might not be true? This is called an automatic thought, where you try to look at your automatic thought and look at the things that are for it that make it look true, and the things that are against it that kind of prove it false. Because the reality is that's a bit of a thought distortion. I'm going to close this up for a moment because that was a big one. And a thought distortion. The everything is a thought distortion. Because everything, all or nothing like that, generalizations, very difficult to prove true. Because technically, even if one thing you do in the future, which you can't read, is right, then not everything you do is wrong. And if you are right that everything you do is wrong, well, thinking is a thing that one does. So if you are correct in thinking that everything you do is wrong, then you did something right by thinking something right. In which case, but even if you were right, you wouldn't be right, right? Because by thinking that everything you do is wrong, if that were true, then it would be false. Because you would have done something right, can't be correct. Let's look and see. Well, let me fold it a little more. Just as I suspected. It's empty. This spell has no power over you, and it should not be bound to you anymore. A lot of people don't understand the words in the ancient texts that talk about the kinds of sorceries in scripture. Sorry, scriptures, the kind of sorceries that are banned. And one of them is binding spells together. A spell isn't like a recipe, like cooking or making a medicine, right? A spell is binding together things that should not be bound together, usually interpreted as binding different spirits or demons or something like that to a person via different rituals, right? It doesn't mean playing D&D. It does not say in scripture thou shalt not play D&D, contrary to some understandings. But you're not supposed to bind together spells. You're not supposed to be a crafter of spells, is the word. And in some ways, this being bound to you is like a spell, not the bag. The bag will be part of who you are. You have to have memories. But binding to yourself, you can see all the potions and stuff behind me. You can see this is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. Thinking about the boundaries between magic and science. Thinking about where the truth lies and so forth. What is and isn't good and why. Why would some things be not allowed? And it's not just arbitrary. Just like it's not just arbitrary that we don't allow killing. Your hair is so lovely. The fact is, this is kind of metaphorically like a spell, right? Something that's bound to you that shouldn't be, because it's empty. Everything you do can't be wrong. If it is right, and it can't be right if it is wrong. It actually can't be right if it is right. You know what I mean? Sorry, my words are difficult. A lot of what I do is wrong. And a lot of what I do is right. And it's funny because I feel like it can't possibly apply to you, and I want to bind it to me. I want to say everything I do is wrong. That can't be either. So let's get rid of this. I would tear it up, but it's loud. And drop it in the fire to hear the fire flare. Alright, let's keep going. We really have to clean out this bag of yours, I think. I think that's pretty important. So we'll turn this little doohickey. Do you know what I'm doing when I'm turning this little doohickey? There's a little doohickey right here. And I'm turning that. Sometimes you have to know how to get into people's bag. Alright, let's keep going. Let's see what else is in here. In your bag.
You'll never really matter.
Weird sounds you have in there.
What happened has left you so broken. You're not going to be able to help anybody else.
Why do you think that? Did you know that brokenness is sometimes the path by which we are most useful? A lot of scientists only begin researching something because their family member has a disease or because they're hurt in some way. And so they help others the doctor yesterday, which was very difficult for me to do. So you should praise me because I went out of the house and it was hard. I had a panic attack beforehand and had to call my therapist. But then I went to the doctor. It's because hospitals and things like that give me a lot of panic and fear and memories. Memories about people who have passed, or ways in which people didn't back me up when I felt like we needed to help somebody, and I felt like we didn't help that person because I couldn't get back up, and that it wasn't good enough. It's like when you do the very best you can, but you can't win. Sometimes you get tired of that feeling, and sometimes you break. But anyway, this isn't about me, this is about you, but let me explain what I'm saying. I went in, and the doctor was really, really compassionate and sweet and listened to me, which was not something, like, they're always polite and professional, but you never feel like they let him tell you that doctor has been through something, and you could see it in his eyes. And later, when he talked about different procedures that might be able to help me, including like a nerve block, when he talked about it, he revealed that he'd had something similar done for his spine or something like that. He has something so wrong with it that they had to like install something on his nerves, to put it very simply. So, and this is an anesthesiologist who, because of his experience with pain, knows how to help other people with pain and is able to explain what a procedure is like because he's gone through it. That's maybe an extreme example, but as long as we live in a world where people hurt each other, where there's disease, where we have problems between ourselves and the environment around us, as long as we live in a fallen world, in other words, a world with pesha or sin, right, where we are greedy and we hurt the environment, and then that affects climate and disease, and that affects us, or where we are just cruel and selfish and we hurt each other directly, right, whether indirect or direct, wrong, right, as long as we live in a world where there's wrong, we're going to need people who turn that wrong into right by taking their pain and their brokenness and helping other people to heal. There is a Japanese theologian whose name escapes me now, but you can look up Japanese theologian, The Pain of God, and he talks about the idea of God being in pain. And obviously this is philosophical, this isn't my scientific medical stuff, but he talks about the idea of his pain and his pain on being separated from us because of the darkness in the world. He talks about him healing our pain through his pain and coming down, and that's what the Messiah does. The Messiah takes pain to heal our pain and reunite us so that it may be resolved. But that story and experience of suffering makes God himself better. There's a passage in the Brit Chadashah in Hebrews, and I didn't see this in this Japanese theologian's work, but it's something else that I read that talks about how he became made perfect through suffering. The Messiah, who's already perfect, who's the divine incarnation, fully human and yet fully divine, who in some ways gives up his divinity in order to be able to die, but maintains it as he comes back to life, like just this strange mystery and enigma. Who is already perfect becomes more perfect, because that's the secret about perfection. It can't be stagnant. You wouldn't say a perfect person. You're exactly right, Kazuki Tamori. I love him. I haven't finished his book because it's a little smarter than I am. It's a little difficult to read. It's very heady. I have it in English, but it's very intense. We read it in the video we did with LeVar Burton. Remember? With LeVar Burton scientist is perfect if he doesn't always take new data into account as the world changes. You would say then he is dogmatic and rigid and not a very good scientist, in fact. So perfection is always growing. And if even the Most High is made perfect through suffering, then what of us? And what of how much sweeter and stronger we realize we are after suffering? So this is again a very Japanese concept. Have you heard of kintsugi? I'm part Japanese, which is why I put these into Japanese context. But have you heard of kintsugi? Have you? Kintsugi is the Japanese art where a broken bowl, like a broken ceramic of some kind, is put back together along the lines and cracks with all kinds, well, not all kinds of, but with this very strong natural lacquer that is gold dusted, so that every crack is very, very clear and obvious. That's kintsugi. K-I-N-T-S-U-G-I, or ki. I forgot how to make my ki. Kintsugi. No, that was definitely an end. Ki is like. Oh, ki is this one. And this is the kin. Tsu is. Tsu. And then ki is ki again. With the two stripes. Kintsugi. I'm sorry, my Japanese kind of handwriting is terrible and I don't know how to do kanji. But that's what kintsugi is. Where the beauty about these ceramic artworks is that they were broken once, and that we highlight and celebrate those broken edges. They make them more beautiful. So, it's all very philosophical, those answers. But if you don't believe any of that stuff, and you want a more, I don't know, scientific answer, the fact is even animals in nature will teach each other based on bad things they've run into. There's evidence that among different groups of dolphins or apes, that when a behavior is learned, it will be taught within the tribe or group to others in that group. So, just what you've gone through can help you teach others, or it can help you look at yourself and look at the world around you and wake up to what's going on. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Why? For they shall be comforted. They're the ones who see that the world is broken. They're the ones who see that we need comfort. The sick don't need a doctor. Unless they're sick. I said that wrong. What I'm trying to say is the healthy don't need a doctor. But the tragedy of that is, then they don't get to meet the doctor. Right? Our illness brings us to meet each other in special ways. Our illness brings us to meet the divine. Blessed are those who mourn, for they can see that there's something wrong in the world, and therefore they can watch it be fixed. Someone who's blind and doesn't see that anything's wrong will never experience the joy of seeing things made right. Obviously, I don't mean literally blind. My back hurts a little bit. It's difficult. Sometimes the pain of things. Let's keep going through your bag. You're hearing what I'm hearing, right? In your bag. You're hearing the loud sounds that it's making. I'm not just crazy. Let me look a little bit at my tools here. You do hear hear it, right? And you hear the fire. Please let me know if you don't. Let's keep going. It is a beautiful bag. It is a beautiful bag that you have. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. You do matter. You matter, or I am wasting my time right now. And that would make me not matter. So that would suck. So you have to matter for me. I want you to matter. Which of course is a logical fallacy, but I'll give you something that's not. If you help keep someone else alive and give them purpose, does that not inherently make you matter? It's the pain of God's cycle again. That like your pain gives somebody else purpose, so that your pain helps heal their pain, and they in turn can do the same for you. And that's part of community. That's part of helping each other, letting each other be helped, letting ourselves be helped, and so forth. I hope what I'm saying makes sense to you. Let's keep digging. It's good to exorcise the things out of your bag.
You are safe. You are weak. There is no rest for the weary.
I think these things we've covered, right? You can let them go. Let's just kind of let them go, let them out. There's some on you over here. I'm very sick and very weak. But even being able to recognize that is a hope, right? Somebody who's super sick, right? Somebody who's completely in a psychotic break, for example, has no idea that they're sick. Someone with really severe schizophrenia doesn't know they have schizophrenia, right? So even knowing you're sick, you may or may not like C.S. Lewis, but he said this really intelligent thing once, where he said that the more under a spell you are, the less you know you're under a spell. It's the same with illness. Somebody who's super addicted to alcohol doesn't think that they're an addict, right? But you know if you're sick or ill, and that's a good thing.
You don't know. You don't know what to do. The world will be better off without you.
That's a nasty one. That's a nasty one. I think that we decide if the world would be better off without us. Based on what we decide to do. I'm gonna lock that up for a moment. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you decide that with the days that you have left on this planet, you are going to volunteer for the homeless, or work hard so that you have money that you can leave to an orphanage or somebody else like that, or every day tell somebody, whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe you're stuck at home and you're going to do the vocal ID voice bank, or choose to use what resources you have to give them a voice, right? Even if you can do nothing, even if you are completely physically and emotionally bedbound, right? There's little things, like kind things you can say, right? There was somebody who wrote an entire book, even though he had locked-in syndrome, just moving his eye up and down. Actually, there's been a couple. One was a poet, it was a woman. The other was a man who wrote a story about his experience with locked-in syndrome. My back is hurting a lot, so I'm gonna have to shift position here soon. But you know what I mean. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Oh. It's silly. Silly thing. Oh, my back hurts a lot. Your potential alone has meaning. I know somebody who is still mourning a miscarriage that she had that severely impacted her. She never even met that person, but just the potential of that person meant that a world without that person was painful for her, is painful for her. If a tiny little unborn fetus can have such a big impact on somebody's life like that, then what about you? Just by existing in a loving way, being a quiet presence, just being there, just existing, just listening. Sometimes the passive, the Wu Wei, the Taoist Wu Wei, right? You choose whether or not the world would be better off without you. And sometimes we want the world to be able to be better off without us so that we can escape, so that we can leave the heavy weight of other people's suffering and our own suffering behind, because existing carries with it a powerful and sad responsibility. Just existing. Especially existing in a world where you can hear my words, because you have internet, which means you have access to all the knowledge of everybody's suffering. That existence alone, right? That can be heavy. So sometimes we want to think that the world would be better off without us. But the fact is, it's not. We need you, and we need you to get better. The potential of you is so great. Even if right now you may not be contributing what you want. And your life isn't just about what you can do. What you can do is, of course, where the evidence is. That's where the logic lies. That's where I can give you a scientific argument. What we're doing is cognitive behavioral therapy skills, by the way, right now, practicing answering those nasty negative thoughts that you carry back there. But on another level, you're not just what you do, you're what you are. And on that spiritual level, right, to me, you can see the scientific and the spiritual blend together, because if reality is reality, if there is a God, if this stuff is true, then it's true. And we should be able to interact with it. Just like, okay, you can't maybe touch nuclear reactions because you would have problems, but you can still measure them even though you can't measure them on a human level, right? That's why we have the Hadron Collider. So maybe on the spiritual level, there's things that we can't access or directly observe yet. But if they're real, there will be ways. They just need to be approached carefully, the same way that you would approach radioactive waste or something else like that, right? So there is no boundary between them. On the other hand, if we say, oh, I don't need to apply logic to this, then maybe it's not real. Things that are real are real. You know, things that are there are not always there all the time. Things that are there are not always observable. The things that are real are real. So, that's my disclaimer. But as I was saying, your value is not just in what you can do, but there is someone out there who values you so much that they felt out of all of your family's evolutionary history, out of all of the possible genetics that could have made somebody else, instead it made you. You are here for a reason. And maybe it's more than what you can do. Maybe it's who you are and who you can find. I really believe that the center of the universe, the divine, is waiting for you and longing for you, and just delights in your existence, even though it may not feel like that. Even though sometimes it may feel like either he's very far away, or he doesn't exist, or he doesn't like you very much. I have often said, excuse me, my nose is itchy because of the makeup. I have often said, let me wash my hands too before I touch your head. Has the hand sanitizer here. Since I touched my nose. As I was saying, I have often said, oh, I distracted myself with my nose. I think I lost it. Where was I? Oh, talking about how you are special, basically. I missed it. Oh, I have often said, I know God loves me, but I don't know if he likes me. So I understand that feeling. So, sometimes for a little while, we have to do without the sun, so that when it comes back, we know what its light really is like. And because there is something refreshing and necessary about the rain, even though we may not want it. So, sometimes you have to have a little bit of hell in order to have heaven. Those are, of course, Greek words, or Greek-oriented words, and not really how the Jewish concept works, or how the concept works in Old Scripture, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you have to have a little bit of the absence of God in order to understand the joy and delight of his face. And that's really what it comes down to. We exist for pleasure. I'm a hedonist, especially because I'm in pain all the time. I'm not sure which contraction to use there. Not contraction, but which, what's the part of speech called? I can't remember. Which grammatical piece? Butter and teasing. We are made for pleasure. And there is a very particular shape that fits the receptor for every different kind of receptor that experiences or modulates pleasure in our body. Similarly, our souls have a shape. All that electrical programming. I know last time we talked about how I don't believe in the soul. But you know what I mean? Who we are throughout history, throughout time, from the very first atom that ever was to become a piece of you, to the very ending form of who you will be on the last day, and then into eternity. You, across all of time, the you that the Divine One can see outside of, being outside of time and seeing that whole you, right? You. You have a shape, and that shape fits a particular place on the divine. There's a particular aspect of the divine that only you can show. And there's is a special joy and pleasure that only you can have in connection with your purpose, with who you are. If I find in myself desires nothing in this world can satisfy, they can only conclude that I was not made for here. I love that song. Have you heard that song? It's very sweet. If I find in myself desires nothing in this world can satisfy, I can only conclude that I was not made for here. If the flesh that I fight is at best only light and momentary, then of course I'll feel nude when to whether I'm destined I'm compared. Speak to me at the light of the dawn. Mercy comes with the morning. I will sigh with all creation grown as I wait for hope to come for me. For we are not long here. Our time is but a breath, so we'd better breathe it. And I was made to love, and I was made to love. I was made to know you. Hope is coming for me. Hope is coming. Speak to me at the light of the dawn. Mercy comes with the morning. It goes on. I will sigh with all creation grown as I wait for hope to come for me, for me, for me. I know this really pretty a cappella version, so I like that. Anyway, too much philosophy. Let's continue the spell work. Let's continue the magic and digging through so we can find what's in here. Sometimes the case is that in our bags we have all of the pain and stuff up top, and we don't dig past it to all the beautiful things that have happened to us. Let's take a look though and keep looking.
You know what you've done. What they have done to you can never be forgiven. And has left the scars so deep, you are never going to heal.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one, my dear. I just want to hug you. I feel like I've said a lot. I just want to hug you. Sometimes I want to just fight these things that get into your head. Sometimes I just want to stab them. And the people who've hurt you, sometimes I just want nothing more than to punish them. I took care of a lot of assault victims, so there's a lot of anger that I have. I think that's why I like the Tanakh, what Christians call the Old Testament. It's not really old, it's ancient. The Brit Chadashah is also ancient. I like that there is a vengeful Lord of Justice waiting in the wings, who is giving everyone a chance, but at the same time is watching every injustice with a burning soul, just waiting to strike. There's a passage that talks about waiting until their evil has been fulfilled. He's gathering all the evidence to prove, and then to commit justice is how that verse is. It's a complicated thing, and platitudes never, ever are enough, really, to make somebody feel better after all the horrible things that have happened. But what somebody did to you is not who you are. And a lot of these automatic negative thoughts rely on future telling. They rely on you will never. There's no rest. There's nothing in the future. Things are never gonna get better. But you don't know that. You don't know the future. Most of us don't even really understand our present or our past. How can we assume that we know the future? You don't. You don't know the future. You don't know. You are more than what's been done to you, and you are more than what you have done. If you've done something, you have to do your best to find justice and make amends. But self-punishing is different than justice. If what you're doing is going to be helpful to the victim that you have hurt, that's one thing, right? There is a kind of justice, where you have to make sure that not just amends are made, but wrongs have been punished. But that's not your place. You don't punish yourself. You submit yourself to a higher authority and make sure that you have done what needs to be done to bless the victim, to amend things, to do your best. Or if it wasn't like a wrong so much, but like a mistake, you take whatever logical measurements you can to prevent that in the future. But self-punishment is inherently selfish, where it's just you want to feel pain to make the pain go away. You have to have the bravery to live in your mistake, be vulnerable with it. Sometimes people will even want to physically hurt themselves, right? Cutting or things like that. But that is never, ever, 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 ever going to fix the past. Your pain now doesn't make less pain happen in the past. It's inherently selfish. So, you have to find positive ways to make amends, and then you have to step into the future and do differently, And sometimes we're talking about serious mistakes, like, horrible things like adultery or like, other things. I think especially things that we've done with our own bodies, especially things related to reproductive stuff, because that's just such a biologic, inherent part of like who we are as creatures, almost on a spiritual level, right? All of that stuff is very, very hard to overcome if you've made those kind of mistakes. Things that have led to addiction are really hard to overcome. Things where you've said or done something that really hurts somebody else, especially parents sometimes will find that they've done something that at the time wasn't so terrible, but in the end ended up messing their kid up. Like, that's hard. There are so many mistakes and wrongs, not just mistakes, but intentional wrongs. But just you wanting to right it already means you're on the right step. So you holding on to that past, you gotta make it right. Give the victim what they need to be better. If they need your absence, that's something, right? You can't push yourself into their life. Make sure that you've submitted to the proper authorities as far as how justice works. But mostly make sure the victim is okay. It's about them. It's not about you causing yourself pain so that you can feel better. Instead, be brave. Live in the pain of your wrong. Teshuvah. And step forward. Teshuvah. This is, of course, blending back into the spiritual instead of just the logical. But Teshuvah is the Hebrew word that is often translated repentance. But in Scripture, God Himself can do Teshuvah. We don't usually think of God as repentance. repenting. But teshuvah is turning towards. They don't have as many specific words as like in English or Greek, because a lot of words are more broad, and teshuvah is a broad word that means turning, returning to. So you make your turn towards the right path, you make your turn towards the divine, and he turns towards you. That's the idea. And that's where a lot of the ideas of him forgiving you comes in. He cannot forgive wrong done to people he loves, so he can't just let it go. But he finds a way. Life finds a way. He finds a miracle, and that is the miracle of the Messiah. That this quandary that plagues the divine, that he loves the wrongdoer and the victim, and he cannot accept what has been done to the victim, because that would defy not just who he is, but the laws of nature, we call it karma, themselves. Everything would unravel if he just lets it go forever. But at the same time, his heart breaks for those of us who make mistakes. So the mystery of the Messiah is finding some way in which these two things can come together. And that's the mystery that Kazakit Morin talks about with the mystery of the God in pain. It's the mystery of our pain. It's the mystery of love itself, because love is a kind of pain. Because those you love will almost always mess up, right? So many mysteries all wrapped up in this idea. And it's not really a transference. It's not this injustice of he's going to, like take out his anger on somebody, on himself, on the Messiah. But instead what he does is this mystical transfer of taking on the pain and suffering of the world, and the pesha of the world, and the guilt of the world. Taking it on and being in it, and suffering in it. And it's a mystery that's very hard to understand, really. People make it very simple, and they try to make all these analogies of like a judge sending his son to jail instead of a murderer. And these things are far too simplistic and a little bit ethically problematic, right? It's much bigger than that. But at the root of it all is teshuvah, is making a possibility for you to begin to do your turning, of infecting the world with his DNA, his blood in a way, so that we have that instinct within us to turn and teshuvah and make things right. There's just a lot going on there. It's so simple that a child can understand it. A child can understand somebody stepping in the way of a bullet for them, right? Bullet being the consequences of the world we've ruined. But at the same time, it is so much more complex. And I think about it often, and how complex and confusing this kind of theology is. Again, very spiritual. Not psychology was originally called psychology, as in the study of the psyche, or what was called the soul. And of course that terminology has changed a lot. I told you I don't believe in the Greek definition of the soul, which is what a lot of Christians believe in. This very dualist, and I think kind of unscientific way of thinking. But I think it makes it easy when you're talking about things of the mind to eventually end up talking about things of the beyond, so I apologize for that. I think we're almost done. I think we found a lot of the things in here. I hope that it's helpful to dig through some of these common lies that you have in your bag, and just start to dismantle them and let them out. Kind of let your bag breathe. Let it breathe.
There's no person like you.
There is alone. And you are not alone.
You have no nerve.
And we've disproved that many, many times.
There's nothing about you that anyone really likes. The people who claim to like you are lying. They don't matter.
That's It's a hard one. I hope these things sound more like nonsense since we let them out. They really are nonsense. My nose is getting so itchy because of the makeup. Forgive me, I'll wash my hands again. I have my little hand sanitizer here. You understand, right, why all those things are not true? That last one was a thought distortion called discounting the positive, right? You discount the positive people in your life, which is quite insulting. By saying like, oh, no one really likes me, so all the people who do like you are no one. They're reduced to nothingness in your eyes. Which is kind of messed up, isn't it? Right? That's a little bit messed up. You can't be that way. You gotta be good. Gotta be good to yourself. Because otherwise you're really not being good to the others that care about you, right? Makes me a little angry when somebody I care about doesn't take the steps they need to for their health or psychological well-being. Makes me a little mad because it's like they don't care that I need them. Right? You gotta care that you are needed. And maybe you don't have a lot of close friends yet. Sometimes close friends aren't what you need. Sometimes you need people who need you. Sometimes you need people to help. Sometimes that's what you need. And then over time friendships form. So find somebody who's lonely, find somebody who's miserable. Be kind to them. Because as lonely and miserable as you are, there's always somebody out there who's got it bad too.
The people you care about most don't care about you back the same way.
That's called mind reading. You can't prove that. You don't know if they care or not.
You're wasting your life.
That's a good one. If you think that, then what are you going to do about it? Take steps to do something about it. Sometimes these negative, bad things are not so bad. Sometimes we can use them to fuel us. Kind of like Batman saving a bunch of people's lives because his parents died, right? That's a little bit extreme. But sometimes there's good that can be done because of the bad that is living around or within us. It's okay to be a haunted anti-hero a little bit. That's okay. This is a nasty one. Let's just get it out.
Where do you think you're going?
Yep. There we go. Got it out. Oh look, there's something good in here. Here at the bottom. Let me get a closer look. Once you get past all those things, then you begin to see things like purpose and memories of good things that have happened to you. There was one study that found that adolescents who were able to recall good memories of childhood were less likely to develop PTSD later in life. So you can protect yourself, and it's a causality one, because obviously part of having PTSD is having difficulty recalling good memories. So it's chicken or the egg. But give yourself moments with the good memories. Good memories can be painful too. Dig through these bad things. Do the work. Don't just avoid digging through the bad. Dig through the bad. And then you'll find, I see some lovely things in here sparkling at the bottom. Maybe some memories of the first hug that ever mattered to you. Maybe some memories of the first story that ever inspired you. Maybe ideas. I think there's still more, don't you? Of course, there are ideas of what you might become, of ways that you might change the world, things you might do, ideas of things that you might make. You don't know the future, and that's what makes it beautiful. You have such a beautiful bag. There are beautiful things in your bag, and it's my job to help you weed through the bad ones. But take your own time to weed through the good ones. Here, let me pack your bag up for you. Take it home. Be good to it. Take the bad with the good and be brave and sit in the bad things. I believe in you. You have everything in this bag that you need to be who you need to be. Everything that's missing, and the reason it's empty is because it's the emptiness that you need. Because that is where the divine can fill you. You have all the emptiness that you need to make room for the divine. And you have all the baggage and past and pain and pleasure that you need to be a special you that no one else can be or has been throughout history. I think you have everything you need in this